uppercut, try to hit me in the gut, thinking that I won't react. You whispering my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, pulling the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home. Begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying age, you're in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, only the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, 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 yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, only the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh.
Photo of you in my mind, on the table under lights. There's no one here but you and I. This neon town is yours and mine. And I said, hey, Caruso. Stayed up through the days and nights, and we watched the world get light. Hey, Caruso. Sunlight, freedom in your eyes. Please don't leave now.
assume the audio is off there. It's suggesting that the audio is off. If the audio was off, which I assume it was, this would be probably one of the first times I've ever caught it before going live. So thank you all for joining us. I'm reasonably confident that the sound is on. All the indicators here say it is. So I'm going to go ahead and say it is. So, and then I'd ask for a sound check, but the live chat's going to lie to me, and we know it. So a couple of quick things. The call-in line is down, so I was trying to get that up and running. So we had what can only be described as a catastrophic system failure, and it was probably mostly my fault. I think it was a confluence of events caused basically the destruction of every website that I own. This includes the Codex, which was very difficult for me. I spent a year full-time building that thing up, and you're not failing to unmute. I know it's a first. The In Time website, my personal website, which had, I think, 10,000 comments on it and all this other stuff. And there are backups, but most of them are like months old, and it takes forever to restore these things because we have all sorts of custom DNS settings and all that other good stuff, which you can't back up, really. It wasn't saved. So one by one, we're bringing it all up. But in order to call into this show, you actually go through the website. It's live.intimeshow.com. Click on that, and poof, you're right in the show. That's down. So you can still come in, but instead of a really nice short link, because we use Teams, you've got a killer link nobody can understand. It's in the description, but the short link is down, so you just got to cut and paste that thing, and it's way too big to put into the live chat. The live chat's just like, no. So we do have the link to come on in. You can come in on any browser. Teams will let you use a browser, anything like that. The call-in number also went through, and it actually looks like we may have lost our call-in number, so we'll have to probably get a new number. But at any rate, so it's going to take a little while to recover from this. We've been doing a lot, and a lot of really good stuff. I'm very happy about the stuff that we're doing and going forward with, so I couldn't be more pleased. But it's like, oh, geez, this happened. This had to all happen at the same time. So it's just, as usual, it wouldn't be in time if we weren't at least a little bit behind the 8 ball. So we'll get it all sorted out. We've made some new changes to the interface, as I think all of you have recognized, and we are porting over, so the in-time interface has basically received an overhaul to a lot of how things were done on the back end, and it's just been much more reliable. Things have been going so much better, and then you just, once you're really comfortable with that, you port all those settings to overtime, after dark, so on and so forth, and we're still in that process, but honestly, it's all looking, I think, really quite good. So I will say, unfortunately, I have misplaced my $400 suede jacket that I usually have on for this, so I put on my $400 black denim shirt. Honestly, I think it looks a lot better without it, but I feel kind of naked if I don't have something worth $400 draping me, so at this point, it's just going to be this $400 thing. So, anyways, anyone wants to call in and have a chat, again, the number is down, and I apologize for that, and a lot of our systems are down and having to be basically reinstalled from scratch, which it can be an upside too, but it's just taken a while. I also noticed, so I moved where my mic is, and I think most people have noticed a considerable improvement in the sound. I like how the sound is, but first of all, I get very uncomfortable now doing the hand motions that I used to do and really love to do, because the mic it's actually right in front of me. You can't see it, but it is right in front of me. I move my hand in the wrong way, and I'm gonna knock the the mic out, but I move a lot. But now it's just like, ever since we had Seth Andrews on, I'm now doing the Seth Andrews thing. I don't mean to. It's like I realize I have to move. I just have to move. And there's actually, I have some nerve stuff, so I end up having to move, and I'm pretty dynamic anyway. So now I just started doing what Seth Andrews does, which is I just hover around the mic and just keep doing this a lot. So if you see me doing this a lot, I didn't used to do it, but it's like now I can't actually do this or this nearly so much anymore. So now it's that. And the chair is acting up again. It's doing those noises. Yeah, we'll get to it. So what are we going to talk about tonight? A couple of things. I will say this, so we did the Peterson show, and some people brought to my attention some areas in which I think we clearly, I do think, now I've heard the complaint that he does not understand the law properly many, many times, and I've never really had it explained to me the difference between what he understands and what he says, and the defense that whenever you talk to people who are big fans of Jordan Peterson and you say, okay, he doesn't understand the law correctly. They're all like, well, but you could still go to jail. And there is absolutely a path to jail. I'm sorry. There is a path to jail. Anyone who says there isn't, there is. It's remote. It could almost never. But, it depends. I've seen fact checkers, and I've gone to a lot of fact checkers on this, and they say, could you go to jail just for violating this law? And the answer is no. Well, it's nuanced. Is there a path? Yes. But the problem is that's not the part that he's, I think, misunderstanding. So I've had a chance to look into it. I haven't done a deep dive. Will probably to some extent, if for no other reason than I can understand what we might have gotten wrong better. I mean, right now, I'm not planning on doing another show on it. We've always left that option open, but I am JP'd out, man. So I'm gonna, but I think there are definitely some things that we need to look at. And if his misunderstanding of the law is kind of the way I understand it, then he probably did a lot of damage and a disservice, saying it did what it did, because I think there was probably a disconnect there between what he was arguing and reality. What was that? Was that on purpose? Was that by accident? Well, I'll say this. I'm sort of usually the last one to ascribe negative motives to a person, but he's a smart guy, and you can't say he's not. He's a PhD, many peer-reviewed papers, and he knows how to read. And he knows how to read nuanced things. He does, period, end of discussion. So it's hard for me to come up with an extremely charitable way for how and why he would have gotten this wrong. But I think that's on the table, too. All that notwithstanding, if he was correct about the law, I stand by the fact that law, morally, one would have to oppose. I will also say what I've said before, which is there are many laws. And Martin Luther King Jr., everybody knows that he's, for me, been a huge influence in my life since I was about 8. And not to say, honestly, I think all the things that he did were simple and can be reproduced by anyone. But they're not easy. It's like, in my own life, I'm sitting there going, like, trying to be the best person I can be. And it's like, oh, I know how it's done, but it's not easy. It's simple. But wow, it's not easy. So having said all that, there are laws you have to oppose, but all the laws that, for example, King opposed, or Gandhi, or any of these people, he wasn't hurting innocent people to oppose them. The interesting thing about the Canadian bill is there's no way to oppose it without hurting innocent people, period, end of discussion. You cannot oppose it without hurting innocent people, which is why I think whether he followed through on his threat to deliberately misgender people is actually rather important. I've seen no evidence that he has. He may well have. He certainly threatened to. But the problem is, okay, there's a law that has to be opposed, but the only way to oppose it is to hurt innocent people. While I strongly, assuming that if we grant him his interpretation of the law, which I think is at this point probably difficult to do, but I haven't done a deep enough dive yet that I'm confident to say that you can do that. But it looks to me like there are probably issues with his interpretation. But let's grant it for a sake. Then I think he would have to oppose the law. I think any moral person would have to oppose the law. The problem is the method that he said he was going to do was, I think, at least as immoral as anything with the law. So I think you've got a very real problem there. I don't know how you get around it, but I don't think his solution was the best. At any rate, there's more, I'm sure, and we can go on. And like I said, I'm really not interested in doing a deep dive on it. That episode is back up, and we had it privated for a while. It was also struck for a while. But it's back up. I want to review it and, with a bit more of a critical eye, see if or where we screwed up. Anyone else can sit there and say, okay, here's where you guys screwed up. I think there's still a lot of good stuff to stand by on that one. And, we'll play it out over time. We don't have to have any answers to the stuff today. I know 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐻𝑒𝐚 would definitely want to be involved in any discussion. So, I'm not big on having a discussion, but at least right now, I think we should. And again, whether or not we do another episode, we've got a number of episodes planned coming up that I'm really looking forward to. So, let me just see. It almost looks like someone's trying to come in, but I don't think that's the case. It's just there was a kind of a hiccup there. Yeah, that was just a hiccup. The screen just readjusted itself for no reason. It's not that sometimes if somebody's trying to come in, a new window pops and all the windows move, but not in this case. Yes, I got like monitor, computer. It doesn't matter. At any rate, that's the monitor right there is what's monitoring who's coming in, and nobody there right now. But boy, does it keeps readjusting and just draws focus. And then squirrel. So anyways, I think there's a lot to talk about. I do think that a lot of his arguments aren't properly understood. I think even if they're understood, is there stuff to be objectionable about it? Obviously, there would be. It's on some level, because nobody gets anything right all the time. But how much, I think, it's I think at some point we'll look into that. Anyways, it's back up for those of you who want to look into it and chat with us about it. Leave a comment. Hit me up personally if you have an issue, and or you can always chat with Xandering, and because he was a big part of that show, and he was there, of course, for the whole. It is Xandering. Well, let's just blame him. I like that. We're getting back to the blame the nearest Canadian. So a lot of blame for a lot of the issues we've been having recently has been landing on Neil604. He hasn't been on the show in a while, but Neil604 is the new biggie. And we have other people coming on to help us, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. And you know what? If there's something that you're interested in participating with, one of the things I do on the back end is I bring up. As I'm producing, I also, bring up questions and I can bring them to the screen. But that actually we have a web interface for. And we've had people who are volunteers or people who work on In Time in some capacity. They'll sometimes take over for it, and that's great. And that's, so if you're interested in helping out either with the thumbnails or something like that, let us know. Come on in and we'll chat. There's always stuff to do. But we also just have so many people who've been so supportive and helpful on the Discord. So I really want to say thank you to that. Last couple of weeks, have not been able to keep up with the news myself. Part of it was prepping for the that show. A huge part of it was dealing with the failures of all the websites. It was just one account that went down that held everything. So that's just been, and that's just going to be, I'm going to be dealing with that for months. But at least I don't feel like I'm losing ground every day instead of gaining it. I did catch up with Martin Joss, who was a guest that I really like. Anglican Miniker. I don't know what a Miniker is. Somebody, we can look that up, Anglican minister, who we had on, who I really like, and we always want to have on. Great sense of humor, hilarious guy, and so we're going to see if he kind of took a sabbatical from Twitter, which is wise. But he reached out. We've been chatting with him, a few other people, and we're looking at some other guests. So, lots of good stuff planned, but dearth of shows tonight. We figured would come on. Don't know how long we're going to be on. I'm up for staying on for a little bit. If anybody has any questions or anything they want to talk about, drop it in the live chat. Obviously, I think right now the biggie thing is Ukraine, and there are as many opinions about it as there are people. I'll say this. We had on Commander Lance McMillan to discuss it. He was of the view that this was basically all a bluff. And judging by history, he's completely correct. I'm leaning towards the greater than 50% probability that this is actually going to happen. But that's kind of what this guy does, right? That's what Putin does. He makes it so that you never really know. And every strategy that one can employ in either the political war, as von Clausewitz, or just the war itself, every strategy you can employ has upsides and downsides. And one of his strategies is being completely unreliable. I shouldn't say unreliable. That's actually the wrong term. Unpredictable. So nobody knows. And so every time he threatens something like this, he does get something out of it, right? Because people negotiate with him and this and that, but they also really get sick of him, and they get much less willing and eager to work with him on other fronts. He's now working with China a lot. If they've weighed in on this, I haven't heard, but my understanding is that they would not be pleased if he actually invaded. But the last that they said, sort of in a joint statement, was that they're collaborating together on basically all economic endeavors. So, we'll see where that pans out. I'm right now leaning towards he is more likely to invade than not by a huge margin. But the problem is, he can pull that trigger only so many times and keep credibility within his own party. He has gotten enough people inside his own government, looks like, who are now actually kind of interested in the idea. And Kiev has said that he doesn't have enough troops for a full-scale invasion. And I find it interesting that they keep saying that, because most people haven't suggested a full-scale invasion. The U.S. has said that they think that might be what's sort of a lightning war to Kiev, and perhaps one of the fastest marches to a capital in history. I think we currently hold the record for that to Baghdad. But all that notwithstanding, that's sort of the U.S. position, is that he may just try to take Kiev like in a flash. We talked about what some of the possibility, the difficulties with that, maintaining the kind of logistics and infrastructure. So, I don't think that's on the table. Taking the western half of Kiev, the Dunbar region, that's about a third actually, where there's already rebellion in favor of Russia. That I see him doing, and since he got away with it with Crimea, we have precedent for this, right? I mean, this is kind of what Hitler did, just took piece by piece by piece, and there is a all right. There's an interesting all right. Oh, of course. Okay, I'll look into that in a sec. There's precedent for this. I mean, that's like, what Hitler did. And this wasn't a brilliant strategy, and he was told not to because he was told it wouldn't work. And for the most part, it worked. And then it stopped working, which is, of course, meant that the generals were really ultimately right. But he had gotten away with it for so long. He said he was right, and he felt he knew better than everybody. But then again, every time he tried to do something that shouldn't have worked, it worked. Reminds me a little bit of our own special tangerine president in the U.S. who just has gotten away with shit that you're sitting there going like, this isn't supposed to be. That's been the most shocking thing for me. It's not the things that he's tried to do; it's the fact that he's been able to get away with it, and it's going to catch up with him. This shit always does, but it's taken so much longer than I thought. But I'm not. You don't need to be an optimist to sit there and say it's going to catch up with him. It's going to catch up with him hard. I just, this is, it's open hang. Anyone can come in. The number is down, so you can't use the phone number, but there is a link. You can come in with a browser or Teams if you've got it. And if somebody could only come in on Skype or something like that, we could probably bring that up if nobody is on Teams. We have to choose between the two, and Teams has so many advantages, at least from the technical aspect. I know people don't like to use it. Everybody's got Skype. Nobody likes Teams just because Microsoft. I get it, but Microsoft offloads we can have, our system gets overloaded if there's more than 3 or 4 people in on Skype. The way Teams distributes it, we can have in 100 people. It doesn't overload our system, and we can manage both the bandwidth and the video, because it's actually not rendered here. It's rendered by Microsoft themselves at their own center. So that and a whole bunch of other just technical. It's like, yeah, Teams, we're doing Teams. So it doesn't matter how big, in our old Hangouts, when we got more than 5 or 6 people, you could see everything slow down. That doesn't happen anymore. So at any rate, I'm inclined to think at this point that he's more likely to do it than not. There's still a number of good reasons not to do it. And what the blowback that he's going to get is going to be pretty significant. It's going to cost him a lot. So my suspicion is he's actually, listen, it's impossible to know what's going on. He's a psychopath. He's killed people with his bare hands. In fact, that was his job for a while. And, so it's very hard to sit there and say what Putin is actually going to do and do that with any credibility. I'm thinking that right now it's sort of in terms of what's going to cost him the least, invading or not invading. Invading, he gets a lot of credibility with his own party, credibility inside Russia. Gets, to add the resources from the Dunbar region. Okay, what does he lose? Well, presumably the entire pipeline is going to be nixed. They're going to be kicked out of the Olympics, presumably. How much does he care about that? He pretends like it doesn't really matter, but when you see their behavior, it matters. They care. They're willing to cheat. It cares. You don't cheat if you don't care about winning and if you don't care about the prestige. So, yeah. Oh, well, and Biden's, yeah, there's no, I don't see any way Biden can credibly serve a second term. So the question is, what's he going to do? I think he's going to hand it over to Kamala Harris in his, as long as he does it in, I think it's under 2 years. I thought it was any part of a term, but I guess it's under 2 years. So if he hands it to Kamala Harris in, say, his last year, now she's running as an incumbent with experience in the White House, experience as the vice president. That makes her much, much more formidable. It also eliminates really, unless something really goes cray-cray, which it happens, but it's rare, not since Kennedy, Ted. It eliminates any possibility of us having to deal with primaries in the Democratic Party. And, they can focus on, they can start out of the gate working on the general, and that's a big advantage. So my suspicion is rather than have primaries and try to see who's going to replace him, he's going to actually put her in office. And that's just, benefits like real. So my suspicion is unless something big happens, Kamala Harris will be the first female president. and she will be put in office by his resignation sometime between his second to last year and his last year. That's going to be my guess. So I'm actually very confident of that. I have about an 80% or higher confidence of that. I don't think he wants another term. I don't think he can do another term. He's falling asleep when meeting with heads of state, and there are people who sat there and said, well, that's not necessarily a big deal. And, well, yes and no. Everybody understands at his age, okay, that can happen. But, okay, he's the president of the United States. I think most of that at this point disqualifies him. And it's not his fault. It's not that he's a bad guy. It's not that he's not qualified in other ways. And frankly, considering where the bar has been set by the conservatives, he's more than qualified. I mean, a house plant is more qualified than our previous president because, the house plant doing absolutely... I saw a thing that said, okay, if a chimpanzee, Donald Trump, and a bubblegum rapper were trying to win Jeopardy, who would win? And the answer was the bubblegum rapper. The bubblegum rapper would win because it wouldn't answer any questions, so it would get a 0. Next would be the monkey that would just be answering random questions and just banging on the buzzer and getting everything just like, so a lot of stuff it's going to get is wrong, so it's going to be in the negative. Then would be Trump, who, in an effort to prove he's smarter than the bubblegum rapper, is going to answer every single question. He's going to get them all wrong, and so he's going to finish dead last. And I think that's a pretty good. So I'm all for Juicy Fruit. For if Trump runs, I will start a campaign in the Conservative Party for elect Juicy Fruit 2024, and I hope everyone here will join me. I think Juicy Fruit is better both than a chimpanzee and than Trump. So moving forward, I do think there was a question. So let's see. What is your opinion on why Putin is threatening this now? And okay, he didn't need to. Okay, so a couple of things to understand. There was a comedian. I put this thing by what's his name, The Machine. I put this comedian who talks about, and it's in the lobby. It's this hilarious guy talking about his experience in Russia and joining the Russian mafia, which he did as a college kid, completely by accident. And there he is in the Russian mafia, like ripping people off and doing all this other stuff. And it's hilarious because I've been to Russia. I studied the culture. I studied the language. It's like, yeah, that's about right. All of that. I believe every word of it. And at the end, the police come and the mafia is threatening the police officer. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's an act. He has to threaten the police officer because the police officer is going to do whatever the mafia wants, whether he threatens them or not. But if he threatens them, the police officer's got cover for it. And the police officer, I was just like, okay, the whole thing is theater, but not the Russian mafia is serious. But all of that, I was just like, it's if you know what's going on, I was just like, yeah, they got that right. So Putin seems invulnerable. And he's not. We recognize that. And our last round of a very serious round, when we really took this seriously, was after Crimea. We didn't target Putin. We targeted the people around him. And I did that once. I try not to do that because it's sort of, I think, a last resort. But when I teach, if there's a student that really I can't get control of, and I need to, and I can't call in for help because it's going to, it's like, I mean, there are plenty of ways to do it. If you really can't get control of them, you call the principal, you call whatever, they send someone down from the office. But you lose something when you do that. So that's really well past last resort. So, it's like if a student calls you out and it's a really rough situation. I've taught in inner city gang schools. So, you can things can happen. So finally, I just said, okay, you know what? I had told everybody if they got their work done early, I might let them break 5 minutes early and, all this other stuff. And I said, no, what I'm going to do is the only student who can break 5 minutes early is the one who's causing the trouble. Everyone else, I'm going to hold you 5 minutes late. And every time you laugh at one of his jokes, I'm adding a minute. And he laughed his ass off and started making fun of me. But the reason he was doing all this is because he wanted attention from everybody else in the class. He didn't really care about pissing me off or ruining my day. He wanted the attention from everyone else in the class. But all of a sudden, the people who thought he was funny didn't think he was so funny anymore. And I was going to let him get off. I was just like, okay, you're causing the problem. You can leave. You can leave. No, he's not going to leave because he wants the attention. But all of a sudden, everyone in the class started fucking hating him. And it's kind of an unfair thing to do. It's one of the things that they kind of actually teach and try not to do that kind of thing because you're singling out a student. And I was like, okay, and it's what is it? The Marines do the same thing. If there's somebody acting up, they'll punish everybody else but that guy. They'll give that guy a whole bunch of donuts and say, okay, everyone else gets, the other Marines will straighten that guy out real fucking quick. You don't have to do a thing. So one of the things that we did in the last round of sanctions, and yes, all of this has a point. We didn't target Putin. We were very light on Putin, but we targeted everyone around him. Most of them murderers, thugs, and I mean just murderers, thugs, and either crime lords or people who, for some reason, were able to get. Putin doesn't trust anyone who hasn't killed someone in his inner circle, and now they're all really pissed at him because they don't stick with him out of loyalty, and they do fear him, but not as much as he would like because they're sociopaths too. So he has to keep the people in his inner circle happy. He can't keep them in line by fear like he can do with most people. What makes them so useful to him is they've got no sense of fear, no sense of ethics, and they'll do just about anything that they need to stay in power. They recognize he's the best way to that, which means they protect him like there's no fucking tomorrow, and they'll do anything. They'll kill anybody. They'll do anything. But as soon as he's no longer the alpha male there, he's in real trouble. So what we did was we targeted everybody in his inner circle for serious sanctions. Now, that put pressure on him that he hadn't expected, and in a way that I was actually really proud of as an American. I was like, oh, we do know nuance when we want to. We're trying to get him assassinated. And we were trying to get him assassinated by his own people. But by someone in his inner circle who might say, well, you know what, I don't care who leads, but as long as it's not him. So he now has to throw them an extra bone in order to stay up, and so there's all. So the thinking right now is that, first of all, COVID is a real problem for him. And Russia has at first handled COVID really beautifully. They're a totalitarian state. It's pretty easy for them to do that. Now we believe COVID is really running out of control, especially in the leadership. It's hard to tell. But, and he's got a lot of other domestic problems, and they have a very, what have you done for me lately mentality, which, by the way, so do we. I mean, we could have the best president in the world, but if he spends 6 months not doing something that's obviously big and helps us directly, it's what have you done for me lately? Yeah, you cured global warming, cured cancer, cured, but it's like, talk's clicking, buddy, you only got 4 years. So that's everybody's attitude, and Putin's been in there for a long time. And they're like, okay, what have you done to make Russia better and to make us what we're supposed to be, which is really a world power? And so they like it when he does this because it does give Russia respect, but they only really like it if they get some results. So if he can get a lifting of some of those sanctions specifically against his friends, he can back down real easy and say he won. He's got those sanctions lifted. The problem is we put those sanctions in place because he took fucking Crimea. And we can't just lift those every time he goes out and does something like this because it incentivizes him to do it more. Again, Hitler, World War II. So it's sort of like, he's worked himself a little bit into a box with this strategy, which does have a tendency to work. You got to realize it doesn't necessarily cost him a whole heck of a lot to go to war because he's not elected. And he's going to win whatever war he goes into because he controls the media. It's his immediate inner circle that knows whether or not he's really winning or not. At least they've got some idea, better than most people. And even they don't mind if he's lying to everybody as long as they're getting rich and so on and so forth. And it's not their kids in the military. But nonetheless, this is, so he's in an interesting position. The one thing he really can't do is lose face to his inner circle. He can, quote, lose face to the population of Russia, but he controls the media. So that's never really going to happen in any way that's going to affect him. So the question is, so with Trump, he didn't have to do any of this stuff. At home, oh my God, the general consensus is that he installed Trump. And there's a lot of truth to that consensus. If you take a look at how much Hillary Clinton lost by, she didn't lose by that much because so she won the popular vote. So She actually won anyway by that measure. But what would it have taken for her to have won through the Electoral College? Probably, if I recall, and this is from memory, about 20,000 votes. But it's not just any 20,000. 20,000 in Florida wouldn't have helped her. It was 20,000 in a couple of key states, a couple districts in Ohio. So if you take the right states and or right districts, and this is when you really get into trying to elect somebody, which I've done several times. These are the things you consider. You never look at the entire map in the sense that most people do. You look at district by district. Which district are you competitive in, and does it matter in terms of how many electoral votes you're going to get? Because that's what everybody's going for. They're aware that's the thing. So which electoral votes did she lose that she could have flipped? And with about 20,000 votes in the right place, she'd have won. 20,000 is not a lot. So the next question is, how much Russian interference meddling influenced those districts, and was it enough to have flipped 20,000? The answer to that, to me, appears to be yes, and is yes to absolutely everybody that I've seen that's looked at it, including the New York Times and a few others. We should actually put that, I just want to get back to putting all our sources back up on the website, because it's really great when you guys can go read this stuff for yourselves. But, and this happened when Obama came out and said that it didn't change the course of the election. I said, that can't possibly be true. The election was close enough. An election isn't won or lost by any one thing, but you can take out, multiple straws on the camel's back, pull the right one, and that camel is either, the back is going to break sooner, or it's going to. I think if the Russians hadn't meddled, Hillary would have won, and I think that's a pretty defensible statement, and it's almost certainly true in my view. Okay, so at any rate, whether that's true or not doesn't even matter for this. What matters is, what's he telling his people, and what do they believe? They believe he installed Trump. They believe, rightly or wrongly, probably that he had compromat, he had the blackmail material on Trump. That may or may not have been true, but they certainly believed it. They're impressed by that. They believed that he completely owned Trump. I don't know if that's true or not, but it looked true from where I was standing. And when Trump would go out and talk about what a great leader Putin was, I was just like, wow. And he just plays that clip on his own television, and like the Americans have admitted that, the Soviet method of doing things was much better, and, we should go back to the former Soviet kind of, and it's just like they can play that, whatever they want out of that. And that's why U.S. presidents don't do that, even if they agree with something. So, okay, Trump's gone now. So what have you done for me lately? This idea that these sanctions can go, all the sanctions are back. Trump removed all these sanctions, and this was win after win after on an epic scale for Putin. We were so busy worrying about the damage it was causing to the U.S. We're half withdrawing from NATO. I mean, we're all but threatening to. We're certainly saying we're not going to pay dues unless everyone else pays their fair share, but it doesn't work like that. And obviously, he didn't know it. We're withdrawing from the Paris Peace Accords. China's expanding, and China's an ally of Russia, and their soft power is expanding. So by the time you're done, we've thought about it in terms of what it cost us and what it felt like to have that thing as president. We didn't think about, and why would we, what it must have felt like if you're a Russian. That was a pwn on an epic fucking level. And Putin was milking that for all it's worth. That's all gone. He didn't have to invade anything because he had staged essentially a massive coup against the U.S. And every time Trump did something and we were embarrassed, it's like front lines of the Pravda. It's like, okay, so that's why it looked like he was under control more than Trump. Under Trump than he was under, it looks that way. But the reality is, because he doesn't have to act up. He's got everything he fucking wants when Trump's in office. And that should scare the shit out of you. So I know there was a couple of other questions, so we'll get into those. But, and Trump was totally owned by Putin. Whether I don't necessarily mean that in the literal sense, although I think there was probably some material there that was blackmail material, and I think and that'll come out. I mean, well, there had to be, right? Because all the money that he got from Deutsche Bank came from Russian bankers. Russian banker equals Putin's money. There is no public banking system. It's owned by the state. Putin owns the state. So every one of those loans was basically approved by Putin or could have been denied by Putin, and Putin can call them in anytime he wants to. So Trump's got a problem, and Trump was lying. He was still trying to build the tower even after. And we already, I mean, the amount of shit that he did, we already know about. But anyways, that's why, very long answer to the short question, why on earth did it seem like Putin was so much under control under Trump than he was, and we weren't paying any attention anymore, and NATO was suffering. NATO was suffering far more than it is now. You think Putin was happier now, or was he happier when Trump was in office? It doesn't take long to reach a conclusion on that one. So let me, my eyes are starting, I'm getting a little tired. My eyes are going, and they were never great to begin with. So I'm going to bring up the live chat, and because I think there are a few other questions, so let me deal with that. But so that's why now, that's what mouse, the other thing that happened was my mouse. I have two mice. I have a wired and a wireless. I love the wireless, but it's heavy. And when I use it too long, my wrist starts to hurt. It's one of the best mice I've ever had, and I've had it forever, but the battery now dies pretty quickly, so I got to plug it in. It's really heavy. So I have another mouse I use for backup, but that one fell hard, and ever since it like double clicks on its own. It does, the clicks don't hold, or then it don't, and if I forget to use that, and all of a sudden everything on the panel start going crazy. It's like, why is it going crazy? Oh, using the wrong mouse. I should probably unplug that one, but it stays plugged in. So if the other one loses power, I got to switch. Oh, this is, in time, is a bit of a by the seat of your pants organization. Don't let the beautiful interface fool you. All right, so now I haven't seen anyone trying to join, so the link is still there. And you know what? If nobody comes in, fine, that's great. This was just, we wanted to do this and shoot the shit and talk some. And like I said, and people were asking us about the JP thing too. So, but if anybody wants to come in and have a discussion with me on this, you can. If we don't get anyone in the next 15 or 20 minutes, we may wrap it up. So, and, we usually do these every Friday, and we've been putting them off for a little bit because we've been just doing so much other stuff, and, there's only so much time and so much bandwidth. I'd like to get back to doing them every Friday. Actually, we won't go back to doing them every Friday. Friday was just a very bad time. I think we've moved them to Thursdays, so Thursdays, 9 p.m., may do that. Part of it is, hey, I have a family, and any other day except Thursday night works best for the family in terms of, because that's one of the days. The next day, one of the ones, I got a dad, and I gotta go be a dad, and I gotta get the kids to school. I don't have to do that on most days, but on Thursdays and Fridays, I gotta do that. So if I'm up till 4 a.m. on Thursdays, I'm feeling it. But we'll work it out. But yeah, if someone wants to come in, come on in, and if you can't. And I mean, there are a couple of ways. Like I said, the right now we're not using the Skype. I could probably get that up in a minute if somebody really wanted to do Skype. But we've also got, and that's just live at intimeshow.com. But any other way to reach us. So let me take a look at. We don't have a president. Well, yeah, okay. So to the point there, quote, we don't have a president. Put that up, but right now I don't want to. I'm not going to bring up the thing that lets me easily just drop all these comments on the screen so everyone can see them. But we don't have a president. We have a person who needs a nursing home. And well, there's some truth to that, but it's please believe me when I tell you it's a vast improvement. Like I said, the potted plant would be the vast improvement. And look, here's the guy. Listen, I really detest is not a word I use a lot. I've already used it once today, which is pretty. Because there's a few people that, I'm afraid I have to say detest, and Pence really, because of his ideology, has been one of them. But he's a patriot. One way or another, he's a patriot, and he did what he needed to do. And, it's pretty hard to argue against that. All right, so let's just see here. What is your opinion on why Putin? So this is why Putin's threatening it now and not when Trump was. Yeah, he didn't. He had everything he wanted when Trump was in office. He doesn't need to do anything. He sits back and watches the U.S. destroy. People don't realize what happened really with, and you should look into what happened with our deal with Iran. We were not allowed to pull out of that deal. When he said we might pull out of it, what he really meant was that we would fail to certify that they were keeping up their end, which would essentially get us out of the deal. But there was no clause where we could just walk away. For obvious reasons, you're not allowed to just walk away from your obligations like that. But we were if they failed to keep up their end of the deal. Problem was the UN and the UK and our own intelligence agencies said they were keeping up their end. So he'd have to lie and say they weren't, even though they were, and then fail to certify, which is what he did. So I don't care what you think of Iran. And, I think when we make a deal, we should keep it. And I think we can break those kinds of deals only so many times before we can't make them anymore. And our ability to make them is important. And our ability to get people we don't like to trust us and get on board with something is important, unless we just want to go around killing everybody, which I know that's cathartic. But that's a bad idea on multiple levels. And guess what? They have kids too. So, yeah, it's badass to say that the Iranians, and by the way, most of the Iranian people, with rare exception, well, I shouldn't say rare, but with notable exceptions, most of the Iranian people kind of like us, and they like our culture, and I've spoken with plenty of Iranians, and, they're recently very pissed at us for this and a whole bunch of other stuff. And hey, I mean, they did have democracy until we showed up, which is not a joke. It's not a joke. They elected someone. We didn't like who they elected. Who they elected wasn't pro-U.S., so we helped them initiate a coup and overthrew the duly elected, and that's what happened. That's how Castro got into office. I mean, we say we like democracy. Yeah, we've overthrown a country or two. Mistakes were made, as Reagan would say. So we need to be able to... What country is going to want to work on any long-term deal that's really good for the U.S. if every 4 to 8 years that deal may just be reversed? What he did was catastrophic to our ability to operate with other countries, and Putin knew it. Putin was laughing his ass off. Nobody really cares about Iran so long as they don't develop a nuke. And that deal actually had a pretty good shot at a minimum delaying it. The build went faster at a minimum without the deal, believe it or not. And if you don't believe it, that's fine. Read the deal. Don't sit there and read the deal and figure out what the alternative was. That deal was good for us. It was good for everybody. You want to know how to stop war? Stopping war is actually really easy. It's actually really easy. Well, simple and easy, quite frankly. Make everybody rich. The more we raise other countries out of poverty, the less anybody wants war. China has had the ability to have war with us for some time, but they're making too much money selling us shit. Yeah, they'd love to dominate the U.S. and we're fighting all these political things. But if you want to reduce the chances of war, make sure everybody's getting rich. When countries are being lifted out of poverty, when people all have iPhones, and we're winning a cultural war. It's absolutely a cultural war. We're winning, and that's great. When the Iranians are trying to buy blue jeans, I'm like, that's great. They don't want to bomb us nearly as much, believe it or not. And it works, and it's true. So, Putin just sat back, and every time Trump destroyed one of our treaties, every time he made us look like idiots, every time he said that, he was laughed. Legit, they weren't even trying to. He just said something that was so utterly and obviously false to everybody at the UN. They couldn't help but laugh. It's, to the best of my knowledge, it's the first time the UN has ever laughed at a U.S. president. And they weren't even trying to be rude. They weren't pissed at him. It's just he did a typical Trump. It's like, we're doing this, and this, and we're accomplishing all these great things. And they knew for a fact none of that was true. And the whole group just laughs at him. Just spontaneous laughter. And then they're like, okay. Well, how do you think Putin felt about that? Yeah, that's why you haven't heard from Putin while Trump was in office. You didn't need to. All right. Your answer is to suggest that Putin was a Russian asset. Well, okay. Okay. So we have to have nuance here. Was he a Russian asset? I don't think he was a Russian asset in the sense that, first, there's absolutely irrefutable evidence that he owes a lot of money to Russia. Most of that money was laundered, and he's going to get nailed for that. And if you don't believe me, start looking into the Deutsche Bank thing. We've talked about it. Be happy to go over that again. But he absolutely owes them money. He overvalued his assets so that he could get even more money from them, and most of that money he can actually default on, and he still has it. That's called money laundering. It's done deliberately that way. Deutsche Bank is the biggest money laundering bank on the planet, and it all comes from the Russians. Look it up. So the fact that he was so cozy to the Russians, the fact that he... I think there's probably some reasons. An agent, I didn't fucking say that. I didn't suggest that. And when I said he was owned by them, I did that caveat going back. What I meant was pwned, P-O-W. They just had him. He was in their pocket, whether it was because he was an agent or whether it's because he owed them a lot of money and he didn't want to get into it with them. And he was kowtowed by Putin, and he was maybe even terrified of Putin. I don't think he was, but that would still be in my view owned, and that's what I meant. I did not say he was a Russian agent. I didn't suggest it, and there is evidence that he was anyway. Not a Russian agent, but there's evidence that they had blackmail on him. Whether it was the PP tape or not, I don't know, but That's their MO. It's clear they were trying to get blackmail on it. It's real clear. That they have a standard routine they run, which is there's hotel rooms that are completely bugged, and they bring anyone they want information on up to those hotel rooms, and then they see what you do and who you talk to. Was Trump stupid enough to fall for that? That notwithstanding, I don't know if they had blackmail on him. He owes them money. He lied to the U.S. government about still trying to build a hotel on there. We know that. There's a whole list of all things he's lied about and how much of it's going to catch up with him. I don't know. Most of it, I suspect, will at some point. Past some point, they're like, he's going to be looking at so much jail time. He's going to be facing from the Southern District for at least some of that Deutsche Bank stuff because that went through New York. So he's indictments are expected to be coming out reasonably soon. He's going to get hit with racketeering. He's going to get hit with, and this is we know this out of the Southern District in New York, which is the worst district to have coming. Don't get the DA of the Southern District after you. That's just always been, they don't play and they take their time. That's why they subpoenaed his what was it, CCO. Chief, so it would be I don't know, but they've got everything they want. They've got him, and they've got him good. And we've had enough leaks there that and it's not that hard. I mean, you take a look at what the New York Times has put on his taxes and the money he's been hiding. He's still under investigation by the IRS, and it's been a very long investigation. They don't like doing those investigations and coming up empty. They have to justify those investigations to a bunch of bean counters. They think they've got him. They think they've got him at the IRS. And given what we know about how he's lied about so much other shit when it comes to his finances, and there's loads of records on this. This isn't hard to find. And some people in the live chat may be able to prefer. And if you listen, come into our Discord, ask for the evidence. We got loads of it on the Discord, and we'll link you to stories. Now you can sit there too and just say, well, anybody who says that I'm going to disagree with because they're saying something I don't, I've already made up my mind, which is essentially the argument, right? You may not like the New York Times. They're certainly liberal. So if you're conservative, yeah, but you can't argue against the fact that they're factually accurate. Do they have a liberal slant? And when liberals say no, they don't. Oh, fuck you. Yes, they do. And if I was a conservative, I'd trust them under certain sets of circumstances, but I'd be very weary of the conclusions they draw from any of the facts. But they don't lie. I don't think they've been busted on any lies. And anyone who says they have usually is, again, ignoring nuance. Anyways, I didn't say he was a Russian agent. So let's dial that one back down and listen a little more carefully. It's going to save everyone a lot of time. Although, hey, I love talking. So, I'm more than happy to explain the nuance on any position. Yeah. So, no, I mean, if you're in either party, 40% of the vote is reasonably locked in. You do have to worry about getting them to vote. So you don't want the apathy factor so there's always the GOTV, get out the vote period of making sure that so there's always some preaching to the choir because that's how you get them to sing. But, all that notwithstanding, if you do a decent job on get out the vote, if you do a decent job making sure your own base is energized enough that they'll vote, 40% of your vote's locked in. 40% of the other side's vote is locked in. So what's left is really the 20% in the middle, and that's who decides it. And that's basic. There you go. And then that's who they go after. And so everything's sort of calculated for making sure you don't alienate any of your 40 and have them flip while trying desperately to go for that 20. And then that's the balancing act that they're all doing. Restore Freedom Project. Well, that was awfully kind of you. So I appreciate Restore Freedom Project said, well, I disagree with your answer. I appreciate you and your answer. Sir, thank you. That's one thing that's missing in our discourse. And there are plenty of things. Listen, I've gotten things wrong before, and I will again. So it's much easier for me to take criticism and someone come out and say, hey, have you thought about this, from people who are doing it politely. I get accused every now and then of, what is it? Something policing, tone policing. Well, it's not about tone policing. Someone can come at me with any tone they like, but when someone comes at you, like a bulldog, are you going to be more inclined to talk with them or not? And I can't address every question that's ever thrown at me, and it's not because I don't, even if I have the answers, I may not. You only have so much time in life, and you have a lot of people who are calling you on to account for a great many things, especially if you're on social media. You want to have an engagement. You want to get someone to talk to you. Approach them well. So thank you, sir. I appreciate the tone with which you put that, and I appreciate your recognition of it, even though you disagree. So hope you'll come onto the Discord and we can talk more, and I'll do a show like this again. So you're always welcome to listen. Agreeing with me is absolutely not a requisite for being on this show. So there you go. Oh, dear Lord. So based on actions, it doesn't appear that Putin respects Biden or Obama. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But let's not conflate things, right? I'm not talking about respect. I'm talking about like being able to manipulate and owning them, not in the terms of blackmail, but being able to get them to do what you want. Trump did, and so let's talk about actions, and let's talk about just objective truths. When a president of the United States comes out and starts talking about Putin, about how well he runs things, and that runs on Russian media, and that's not a benefit to us, and it's a huge benefit to him. So he likes it when he does that, and that's why presidents going back conservative, take a look at how Ronald Reagan, who conservatives used to consider sort of like the best president in history, dealt with his Soviet counterparts. And it wasn't the way Trump's been doing it. And what Trump's been doing hasn't been done by a conservative or liberal president in human history. And there are reasons for that. And he's handed Putin victory after victory after victory. And I don't know very many people, and there were many conservatives who were saying this, which is why they get kicked out of the party or not listened to. It's like, well, you in the conservatives, they say, Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line, and he won, so you're supposed to fall in line. And there are people sitting there saying, like, you can't talk to despots like this because it gives them power and ammunition that they need. And he did that. He irrefutably did that. Putin doesn't respect anybody. So if the fact that he doesn't respect someone means that they're not qualified to talk to Putin, Putin's won. Nobody can talk to Putin. He doesn't respect a living fucking soul. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm not impressed with who he does and doesn't respect. The question is, who can he push around? He pushed Trump around. He pushed Obama around more than I'd like. I was a little embarrassed by how much he pushed him around. But Obama wasn't a pushover, which surprised a lot of people. It was less of a pushover than I thought it'd be on some issues. On some others, he was just like, when he was talking about Syria, Obama blew that to fucking hell. I remember, I learned how to catch Obama lying, and he really didn't lie very often, but once or twice he just said something. I was like, oh shit, that's a lie. And I don't mean he misspoke. That's a deliberate lie. He knows that's a claim I rarely make. I rarely accuse Trump of lying. I rarely accuse anybody of lying. Here I am accusing Obama of lying when he said if the Syrians use chemical weapons, that's a red line in the sand. I was like, oh shit. It should be. I agree that it should be. But there was something in the tone of his voice. There was something in the way he said it. And I've listened to enough of his speeches. I said it's not true. So now the question is, do they figure it out? Because if they figure it out, they'll use the chemical weapons. Nothing will happen. And he's just bluffed. He's had his bluff called, and that's really fucking bad for an American president to do. So, yeah. Okay. So when people say that Obama made ISIS in that mistake, there's a decent argument for that. But, the master of bluffs that he never falls. I mean, come on. Don't tell me that Trump didn't do shit like that all the time. We will destroy your country. We will kill you. We'll kill the families of the terrorists. And how much of that could he or would he have done? And where would we be if he had been allowed to do any of that shit? So, let's call a spade in both cases. Biden is respected less by Putin than Obama was, and Obama was basically pretty close to zero. But Trump is excuse the language, I'm just going to say it because it has to be said this way. It's the best way to say it. Trump was Putin's bitch. That was the position. So when I say he owned him, I don't necessarily mean as an agent. I just mean as his bitch, as somebody who's just, when Putin calls and says this, I'll go, sure. Yeah, you took Crimea and you're threatening the world, but let's remove all the sanctions. yeah, but Putin really respected Trump. He said he did because he knew Trump did, but he was just playing to Trump's ego. Putin is a fucking ex-KGB assassin. That's on his CV. I kill people. If I have a knife or gun, great. If I have to use my bare hands, I'll do it that way. How many people do you think he respects out of curiosity? Yeah, I mean, this isn't a joke. This is, we know. We have a file on him. We know his history. Brutal fucking human being. And everyone over there is terrified of them, as they should be. And if he's smiling at you and saying good, positive things about you, it's not because he believes a word of them. You cannot earn his respect. So he's doing something. He's playing you. He tried to play Obama. That didn't work. And then just like, okay, fuck it. Don't know whether it's going to work with Biden. Doubt it will. Tried it with Trump. And oh, dear Lord, Trump just ate that up. And I think you're going to have a hard time disproving that. It's got nothing to do with whether or not he owned them in any other sense. But all right. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, okay, great. So he's using those as a negotiation tactic. What negotiations did he do that worked? Now, it looked like it was working with North Korea, right? But we've all, here's the thing. Okay, so this was a point that we had made earlier, and I think this is, I say often the U.S. lost the Vietnam War, and what a lot of people still bristle at that. At least we're starting to acknowledge that we lost. But what they say is we didn't lose, we left, and that doesn't count. Yeah, that counts. How do you know who won and who lost? It's real simple. Figure out what the goals were going in of each side, and then you figure out who accomplished them. When we went in, our goal was to eliminate the VC and to get the Viet Cong out of there, push back the communists. Okay, that was our goal. The VC's goal was to get rid of us, either by killing all of us or getting us to leave. But killing all of us isn't an option. That's not going to happen. Superior numbers, superior weapons, that's not going to happen. So their goal is to get us out in any way possible. And they were willing to die at a rate of 10 to 1. That's how much we were beating them by, 10 to 1. Because they understood the politics of a democratic society well enough to realize that there was only so much of this that the mothers who were sending their children to war were going to put up with. And they were right. And then we get up and leave, and we say, well, we could have won if we had stayed. Yeah, coulda, woulda, shoulda. They knew we had a limit. They were willing to endure that pain to win. We weren't. So we lost. That we could have stayed and could have won doesn't change the fact that we lost. And then when people talk about, you talk to a capitalist, you talk to a neoliberal, and they'll say, well, true capitalism has never been tried. Yeah, I see a few arguments for that, and okay. But, you talk to a Marxist or a neo-Marxist, and they say true socialism has never been tried. That's not really true. What happens is it gets tried. Lenin, starts the revolution, and everything's going great, and then Stalin comes along and says, I love the revolution. I love the freedom and communism. First, let me kill everybody who objects to me, and I'm going to take power. Like, okay, well, that's not true Marxism. Well, no, it's not. But when you have true Marxism, it enables that kind of corruption. So when capitalism becomes corrupt, you can sit there and say, well, they didn't stick to the precepts of capitalism. Well, that's because it's easily corrupted. So is communism. So are all these things. So when we start talking about ideas that we like, whatever the idea is, if it fails, we blame something other than the idea. When we talk about ideas that we don't like, we blame the idea. So now let's talk about negotiating with North Korea. We've had negotiation after negotiation, and they start to work, and then it breaks down. Why? Well, maybe that we're never going to be able to negotiate with them, and maybe we can't do anything. Well, then maybe we just keep negotiating so as we kick the can down the road until we find another solution. Okay. But what I've noticed is conservatives, when negotiations start to work, doing the Trump method, everyone's like, you see, it works, and then all of a sudden it breaks down. Well, that wasn't Trump's fault. Okay, but when Clinton is doing things that are working, they're demonstrably working, and then they don't work, yeah, Clinton was an idiot thinking he could solve that problem. That's a bit of a double standard, I've noticed. And in the meantime, Obama, Bush, Clinton didn't hand any of the Kim Jong-un or his father, or any of them, anything that really empowered them to make their own people's lives worse, or to improve their own standing with their own people. Trump did that repeatedly. So, and Trump didn't get any further than any of his predecessors. Now, if you want to blame the liberals for that, fine. But that seems to me to be a little convenient, and I haven't seen a conservative president that's done any better than a liberal president, and I haven't seen any evidence that it's been the fault of any of them. So what progress did Trump make? Because none of that ended up working. It looked like it might for a short period of time, but he's absolutely not the first president to make it look like he was going to succeed. Do you remember the roadmap to peace? Yasser Arafat and, oh dear Lord, I've forgotten his name. That really looked like it was going to work, right? When it failed. Do you blame the president? Do you blame Yasser Arafat? Which side do you blame? That depends entirely on your ideology. That depends on what you're assuming going in and what answer you'd like to get out. Because if you want to blame Clinton, or if you want to blame the Palestinians, or you want to blame Israel, you can do that, because guess what? It's never black and white anyway. You get to decide which is the straw that broke the camel's back. And then you can pick a straw that was put on by anybody. Everybody fucked up somewhere. You want to find a way to blame somebody, you can blame them. So that ain't that hard. So I'm not sympathetic to the position that Trump was ever anywhere near getting anywhere with Kim Jong-un. Would I have liked him to have succeeded? Yes. Because as much as I didn't like Trump, that doesn't mean I want him to fail, because his failure is a failure for everybody. And if he could have actually solved that problem, that would have been great. Jesus. And he'd get the props for it. I detest Mike Pence, and he gets so many fucking props. And he did before all that shit happened. My family has always really hated W. Bush. And Bush would do something, and he did it well. He did it well. And my family, this is like personal, just friends or family, would sit there and say, oh, he fucked this up, he fucked this up. I go, no, he didn't. Why are you defending him? I'm not. I'm defending facts. And if Trump is as bad as you say, if W is as bad as you say, guess what? It should be pretty easy to find straight up facts where they fucked shit up. It isn't that hard. You don't have to make it up. But if you're having to sort of make up successes, I don't see any evidence that Trump had any chance of that, but I do see a lot of evidence of the damage that he's caused by false claims, by lying, objectively lying about so many things, to the point where you have to assume the entire world is out in a conspiracy to get him, and some of the old guard conservatives who would never do anything like that, and have to be out to get him. And by that point, it's really aggrandizing, right? I mean, we've talked about conspiracy theories before. I love conspiracy theories. I love believing them, because it's like, I'm the guy who was smart enough to figure out that it didn't really land on the moon. No, we didn't really land on the moon. We didn't do this. We didn't do that. Despite the fact that, if you try to avoid confirmation bias, you can sit there and say, if we hadn't landed on the moon, the Soviets would have pointed it out. They had a lot of incentive to point it out, and they had the technology to know whether or not we landed on the moon. They never said it was faked. And if you want to prove it, Munchausen by proxy, Jesus fucking Christ, that's a different thing. Munchausen trilemma. When you start to look at how evidence is, and I know I'm way off the topic, I'll start to wrap it up, and we'll start to wrap this up, because everyone's going to get bored. But Munchausen trilemma. Make any claim you want, preferably something that you feel is really solid. Like, when's your birthday? What's your name? Tell me what your name is. Make a claim. My name is XYZ. And I say, well, how do you know that? Well, my parents told me. Okay, have your parents ever lied to you? Well, yeah, but they wouldn't lie about my name. Well, how do you know? I mean, then maybe there's a motive that you don't know about. Are you psychic? Do you know all the motives? Well, no, but. Now, if I keep playing this game, it's what's called a reducto. And you've heard of a version of a reducto called a reducto ad absurdum, which is a type of argument where you do a reducto with the goal of demonstrating that a position is, I think somebody, did somebody, nope, I think I missed that, wrong window. A reducto ad absurdum is a way of arguing where you show that somebody's position must be absurd when you do any kind of reducto on it, and you just come up with a really bad conclusion. But if you do just a standard reducto on any position, pick it. And I keep saying, well, how do you know? Well, how do you know? Well, how do you know? Eventually, you might whack me in the head with a baseball bat. That's And to somebody who is annoying enough to do a reducto to your positions, a baseball bat is just kind of like, make it a wiffle bat. I'm not advocating for violence, but people who do that just for fun, that's why people don't like philosophers. That's really why, because that's what they do for fun. And, okay, so all that notwithstanding, all knowledge will resolve on a reducto, a simple reducto. And I just showed you how to do one. You don't need to be a philosopher. Just keep asking, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? All knowledge will reduce to one of three things. Either a brute fact. You've made an assumption somewhere and you're just going to stick with it and say, I can't reduce that any further. My assumption is, and God is kind of a brute fact, actually, because God is like, we're starting with, he exists, and that explains so much once you start with that position. So there are a lot of brute facts that and scientists end up stuck with some brute facts too. So this isn't me just picking on the religious, but so brute fact. Infinite regress. You just sit there and say, well, it just goes on forever. I can't explain it. A lot of atheists end up with a kind of an infinite regress on causality, right? Well, it just goes on forever. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but a brute fact looks like it solves the problem, but it really doesn't. Or circular reasoning. I'm relying on something else that relies on something I've previously already, needed to assume. So all knowledge is going to reduce to that. What that means is there is a fault in all reasoning. And if you start from a position, any position that you would like to hold, you can get somebody to a point where they can't actually deny the position. This is what flat earthers do. And nobody understands why flat earthers are interesting to argue with or why people get into it with flat earthers. And the reason is because if you're debating a really good flat earther, what you're realizing is if you're willing to put all facts on the table, you can't beat them. You cannot beat them. The reason is the Munchausen trilemma. All knowledge, if you're going to be completely open-minded, so open-minded your brains fall out, you're stuck. So at some point we have to make assumptions. At some point we have to have some starting ground, and we go from there, and we hope that we do the best that we can, and we hope that we have lives that are meaningful to us, that are profitable to us and our friends and family, and that make society a better place, and we get good things for ourselves while being a good human being. And all that's resting on assumptions that we have to make, and those assumptions are going to be steeped in what we wish were true, not what was true. So all of life is this work at trying to figure shit out. And I got to all of that to get to the point of, if you would like Trump to be the hero of your story, you can absolutely do it. And there are people who do, it's rare, but there are people who actually believe the earth is flat. But more importantly, there are people who don't believe it, but can't get you to disprove it. And I know a guy, literally a rocket scientist from Los Alamos, who's had problems with flat earthers. And he's just like, you can't, even using complete logic, how come you can't win? Well, because there's an actual problem of knowledge, right? And it's serious, and usually only philosophers have to worry about it. But you get somebody who's trolling, and boom. So if you start with the assumption that Trump is a good guy and or a good president, you say to yourself, I'm not starting with that assumption. I just sort of figured that out. That's why I like the guy. Here's a question. Are you sure? Because I know maybe I'm doing a reducto, right? But because how many times have we decided that we like somebody or we get invested in it, and then because it would hurt to admit that we're wrong, and it would bruise our ego, and it would bruise our understanding of how we make these judgments. It's more than just wrong on this one guy. It means that you've been wrong, at least possibly wrong, on any other thing that you made judgments like this about. So if your gut tells you that he's the best president ever, you damn well better be right about that. So when people start to come up with any evidence you're wrong, instead of objectively looking at the evidence, what are you going to do? You're going to try to find ways that evidence is wrong. And if you do a reducto, you will win. And I can do it with flat earth. I can sit there and you can say the earth is round, and you will be unable to prove it. At some point, you're going to end up with the Munchausen trilemma. And I will just sit there and say, prove it, and you can't. So if you're incentivized to want to believe that Trump was a good guy for whatever reason, if for no other reason than you voted for him, and because you're really sick of liberals who, with their ivory tower attitudes, we're gonna make you take health care because we care about you, and you're too stupid to understand how health care works. So we're gonna force it on you because we know what's better for you than you do. Oh, I'd have thought of voting for Trump if I'd have been on the other side of that. So you vote for Trump, and then any evidence, really good evidence that he's a really shitty guy, and and there's so much evidence. Before I start, I read. Go and read. Here you go. If you really want to prove me wrong, say to yourself, I'm going to have an open mind and mean it and be willing to really have been wrong. Go find the manual for Trump University, approved by Trump. This is his manual for his university, and read it. Better yet, take somebody that you trust, somebody who loves Trump. Don't let them know that it's the manual to Trump University. Give it to an independent person that you trust and say, this is a manual to a business that I found. I'd like you to read it and tell me what you think. If they don't know it's Trump, I guarantee you they will say this is a scam, because it talks about how to get Granny to mortgage her house. It doesn't talk about how to teach classes. It talks about what to do if the police show up. I've taught at universities. I've never seen that in a manual. I've never seen if they can't afford it, here's how you can help them get an extra mortgage on the bank. And when they tell you they can't afford it, you say you can't afford not to, because it's scam techniques all the way through. That's Trump University. Well, then why didn't they press it, and why didn't they do this and that? Ask them. Go look into the case, but do it actually with an open, and realizing that the DA's got his own problems, and they're all trying to. But read the manual. Don't believe me. Go read the manual. It's a scam. And then you sit there and say to yourself, okay, if he's running a scam that far back, what's the likelihood he's really a good guy? And then maybe you start looking at some of the other evidence. And again, a great technique that I do sometimes. I strip the name from it, hand it to someone else, and I say, oh, this is just something I found. What do you think? Somebody I trust. And if they don't realize it's Trump, if they're not poisoning the well with that, they'll sit there and say, this was obviously a scam. And then you say, well, that was written, probably not written by Trump himself, but certainly approved by him. It's his business, and that was the handbook. Then what you're going to see, cognitive dissonance, you're going to have them say, oh, well, there must be a reason. It must have gotten away from him. No, because he defended that. We have him defending that and saying that that's, how it should be done. And shit ton of lies. So, well, every politician lies. Yeah, everybody lies about a lot of stuff. But that doesn't mean that all lies are equal. And that doesn't mean that when you're president of the United States, well, gee, you're everybody, and so you get to lie as much as everybody else. Anyways, so yeah, go read the Trump University manual. And, that's because that's going all the way back. If he's been lying like that since then. Anyways, that's a thought. I'll try to answer any remaining ones and wrap it up quick, because I'm going to have to go. But I'm really glad I did this. And by the way, we've had several different people come in. You guys have been these are great questions. These are great questions. So thank you for that. And I hope my answers make sense, and I hope you're willing to at least think about it. And if you're not, I'm much more to the center than I am to the left. And like I said, I'm perfectly willing to admit Obama did a lot of fucked up shit that people wouldn't, but, you're asking good questions. These are fair questions, and hopefully these are answers you'll think about. And if not, I'll come back and we'll talk some more. There's an atheist I know who doesn't like Nick Souter. Why? Listen, I know plenty. Some of them don't like me because, yes, I'm an atheist and an anti-theist, but I'm more critical of atheists and anti-theists than I am of theists, because I have a higher standard. That's also why I tend to go after the left so much. Well, yeah. I mean, listen, the world is complicated. There is no thing that ever happens. Here's the other thing. Here's another way to look at it. You just got to be careful. And when you look at it this way, it gets overwhelming really fast, so nobody wants to. The truth is, it doesn't have to be overwhelming, but it's not easy. Let's think about one thing. There is nothing that has ever happened that didn't have, really, if you go far back enough, again, doing some kind of reducto, an infinite number of causes that led up to it. An infinite number of causes where if you change one thing, this is the butterfly effect, right? You can say a butterfly caused a tornado in Texas. Well, you can absolutely say that. If you go back far enough and you say that butterfly didn't flap its wings, it wouldn't have done it, because deterministic and how these things work. My favorite is Giuseppe, Jesus Christ, somebody's going to have to put the name in. Giuseppe, I want to say Sangaya, I've forgotten the full name, was an assassin. He shot and killed the mayor of Chicago. Now, if he hadn't have done that, we'd have lost World War II. One guy. Now, why do I say that? How do I say that? The only reason we were prepared to fight World War II was because we had recovered from the Great Depression. Most economists say that the recovery package that later became known as the New Deal was what helped us recover faster than if we had not taken it by a long shot. Okay, well, it was Roosevelt who pushed the New Deal through. Roosevelt had just been elected president. He wasn't president yet, but he had been elected president. And his VP opposed the New Deal strongly, but Roosevelt was for it. Roosevelt goes to Chicago and is speaking in front of an audience. And Giuseppe, I really wish I could remember his last name, an assassin, goes to kill him, gets a chair, but one of the legs isn't on right, and the chair had actually been put in the back because it was wobbly. And as they were some janitor. A janitor kept us from losing World War II because this janitor put a wobbly chair in the back. If it had been a stable chair, if he hadn't noticed it and gave the wobbly chair to just an audience member and left one of the nice chairs in the back, this assassin gets on the nice chair, takes a shot, and wouldn't have missed his target, who was Roosevelt. Instead, he got the guy standing next to Roosevelt, who was the mayor of Chicago. If Roosevelt had died, we wouldn't have had the New Deal. If we hadn't had the New Deal, we would not have been able to recover nearly as quickly from from the Depression, and we would have entered World War II late, and World War II probably would have been lost. And there are so many of these tiny little coincidences, and you can sit there and they're great proofs for God, right? Well, that must prove God because he intervened here. But life is made up of these if you go back far enough. The other one I often use is in 87. A baby fell out of a 22nd story, I think it was a 27th story window, a Brooklyn apartment complex, and landed in a pile of packing peanuts that had been put there. There was actually like one of those pickup trucks filled with packing peanuts and bubble wrap and the whole 9 yards because somebody just moved in. Baby was fine. So, well, that proves God. Well, okay. But in New Mexico in 93, guy takes a gun, just shoots it off in the middle of the air, doesn't worry about it. The bullet travels like 2.2 miles or some ridiculous amount, but the temperature was cold that day. So it reduced the air friction. The bullet was able to travel faster. And there was a girl, 7 years old, bending over to look at something in the Rio Grande. She was with her parents and her head was blown off. What are the chances of him doing that? About the same as the chances of that baby falling into the bubble wrap. If you want to say one was God, you can. But the other one was just as likely. And life is made up of these things. These things are everywhere. And if you go back far enough, think about the person you married. What would it have taken for you to have never actually met them? One tiny decision made differently when you were really, really young would have changed your entire life, right? So we're all slaves to a billion things that happened. Well, now here's why this is relevant, and then I'm going to wrap it up. It's nice. I haven't been able to think like this in a while. I've been sick, and my brain has been very, very foggy. It's not completely back, but it's like, wow, I can hold a train of thought in a complicated way. Giuseppe 𝐬𝐤, that was it. Thank you so much. And I think I had it right in my head, but I was like, I know it didn't start with an S. It started with a Z. Thank you. Look that up, because that's insane. And there was a writer who took that and said, okay, what if he had missed with a law? And that's the premise for Our Man in the High Castle, was that he hit. And there was another, I mean, what if Hitler had been smart enough and just said, one or two decisions that he made that were just stupid and nobody makes any sense, and would have won or would have lost. If there hadn't been a miscommunication and the army stopped just outside of Dunkirk, would have lost. We managed to get almost everybody off that beach on Dunkirk, and that was just because of a fuck up on their end. But then again, we had so many fuck ups too. I mean, it's just like life is a series. Life is messy. Life isn't clean. And so what ends up happening is, if you have an agenda, and we all do, you can't eliminate it. I've got one. I got plenty. I got more than one, believe me. But if you have an agenda, you can go back and pick the cause that you like and say this was it and blame whoever you want. So you can sit there and take a look at World War II and say, really, the reason that we won World War II was, and then go pick a conservative who said or did something that arguably won us the war. And you can say, well, that's it. But I can do the same thing with a liberal. And so I talk about this as the straw on the camel's back, right? The final straw that you put on the camel's back breaks the camel's back. Everybody blames that final straw, but every straw on the back is equally to blame. If one of those pieces of straw hadn't been there, the one that, quote, broke the camel's back wouldn't have done it. So they're all equally culpable in this chain of causality. We only look at the most recent one. But if you're willing to expand your mind and look at anywhere along that length, you can come up with any conclusion you like. It's not entirely unfair, but there's some point where we got to say, what's the most reasonable? So if you want to sit there and say Trump has succeeded in all of these ways, you can do that if you cherry pick any causal event anywhere and say, okay, you can construct a sort of a worldview where that's true. And I can construct a worldview where we didn't land on the moon if you are willing to cherry pick the evidence. And I'm able to construct a worldview if I pick the right link, a causal link to, and that's how, listen, that's how you can blame Jews for everything, right? Because all you have to do is find anywhere in that causal link where it was a Jewish person who screwed something up, and you can say, you see, I can prove that Jews caused everything. Well, I can do that with any race. I can do that with any gender. I can do that with anybody if I want to. It's really not hard. So if you think about this can leave anyone feeling untethered, and they say, well, gee, why just give up and stop trying? Well, you can do that. I think that's how people get hurt. I think that's how you make bad decisions. You're going to make bad decisions anyway. But the best way to make the best decisions you can, sit there and say, I have biases. I want Trump to have been the right guy because he was my guy. And we all know when we make a decision, we don't want to know we're wrong. So we won't look into it. We will shoot down any evidence that comes at it. And given what all of the things I've just said, it's not that hard to do if you've made up your mind you're going to do it. Is that the way you make better decisions in the future? Is that the way you become a better person in the future? I don't think so. But because that claim that I just said that I don't think so, that's vulnerable to this too. You can sit there and say, so it depends on your outlook. Do you want to be the kind of person who's trying to make a better life for everybody? Or do you want to be the kind of person who's just sort of always out to get stuff for yourself? And the reality is all of us are a mix of those. So sit down, figure out how much do you want to live in a world that's of your own creation and makes you happy. We all do it. Denial is important. We have denial for a very good reason. So, we all do that. The question is, how much do you want to do it and at what cost? If you're a patriot and if you love this country, sit down and really take a look at if Trump had been Obama and he'd been doing these things, what would you be saying? What would you honestly have said? Take a look at what conservatives have said about NATO when Democrats shit all over it, 20 years prior, and then see what Trump actually said and did. If Obama had been talking about killing the families of terrorists, I don't think any American would have supported that. Liberals certainly wouldn't have, because that's counter to their ideology, and I don't think conservatives would have. So, anyways, I hope some of the starting positions are at least up for negotiation. But thank you all. You've taken up a tremendous amount of. You've taken up. I've taken up a lot of time. A lot of people have been watching. I think it's been a good show. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I think. The bad news is there's no answers to any of these problems that I've just outlined. These are fundamental problems in how we think and biases. All you can do is try to improve it. And that takes time, it takes effort, and it's time and effort that you have to take from other necessary activities like playing video games. I'm not kidding. You have to rest, you have to relax, and everything you do has a cost. All of it. And you have to rest and relax too. You have to be with your family. You have to spend time not worrying about this. So are you going to take time to sit and think about these things from earning money? Well, that's probably a bad idea. Don't take it from your job. Keep your job. You're going to take it from spending time with your family? Well, probably not. Going to take it from playing video games? I hate it when somebody comes up to me and says, gee, Nick, are you free? And I say, no, I'm playing video games. I'm like, well, video games aren't important. Excuse me, I need to decompress sometimes. So sometimes they are. And, so to sit and think about these things, it is a cost. And it's unpleasant. I think it makes us better people. And so if you really want to be a better person, if you want to be that person that you talk about who doesn't, we all say we want politicians who don't lie to us. Then why do we elect them? Those are the ones who win. Why? Think about it. They're telling you what you want to hear. And it's easier than doing the thinking. And that's true for liberals. That's true for conservatives. But the good news is, if you don't do a lot of this kind of thinking, if you don't really examine these things, it actually doesn't take a lot of thinking to start to get some pretty good results. And again, this isn't, please don't strawman me and say I'm saying that anybody isn't thinking. We're all thinking. But for most of us, a 10% improvement in taking down and saying, let me examine some of these things and why I'm believing this and how much of it is personal. Because it has to be, right? It always is. I defend bad positions sometimes because it's humiliating to admit I was wrong. We all do it. So try to pull that out and say, if all things were equal and this were another president, how would I feel? And I think if you can do that, most people would look at Trump and say, oh, shit. I wasn't looking clearly for a lot of reasons. And part of them is because liberals were being a real fucking ass to you, and anybody who pisses them off is worth it in your book, and I get that. But all that's done now. What we have to do is figure out how we're going to move forward as a country and try to be the best country we can be. That isn't by lying, and that isn't about ignoring genuine problems in the past and in the future. So my hope is everybody can sit and think about, the left needs to do some soul searching too. The left's been fucking up a lot of shit. Well, that's not where we went tonight, but we were there we've been there more than once. So, I hope the people who really are pro-Trump and who sit there and say, well, vaccines are a problem, are saying, they're going like, it really isn't where the evidence lies. And you can change the evidence if you're willing to do all of these things we've just talked about, but that's not helpful to anybody. So anyways, thank you all so much. Restore freedom. To wrap this up, it is objectively true that things were better with our foreign policy. No, that is not objectively true. I don't know how anyone could make an objectively true statement about that. Objectively true statements meet certain bars. That one does not meet it. And I would argue that it's objectively true under certain ones that they were absolutely worse. All foreign policy, I can't make the argument that it's objectively true, but I would argue most of it was worse. And no. No, that is patently false. I apologize. No, that is not. Objective truths are a very small subset of what we talk about when we talk about truths, and it's very hard to make an objectively truth claim, and making one about foreign policy is almost impossible. No. And the damage that he did to our credibility, the damage that he did to, when 9/11 happened, the next day, the French papers printed, today we are all Americans. Think about that for a second. Today we are all Americans, because they had all suffered terrorism and now we had to. 2 years later, they hated us. And with good cause, because we fucked a lot of shit up. But, we can sit there and say we never make mistakes. Well, that's a great way to ensure you're going to keep making mistakes in the future. I'll tell you that. And then when a liberal says, let's think about our mistakes, say, oh, you're the part of the blame America first crowd. That's a great way to get people to shut up about mistakes we've made, which means we're going to keep making them. I think we can do better. At any rate, I don't think I've outright said that something you said is right or wrong. No, it is not objectively true that it is not by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think I've ever heard objectively and foreign policy put in the same sentence. I think that's pretty hard to justify. But at any rate, he fucked up a lot of foreign policy. And most conservatives, look, that was Colin Powell's view, and Colin Powell's forgotten more about foreign policy than you or I ever knew. So if you're going to make that claim, I think you'd have a hard time bringing many people who are qualified who would agree. I've never met one. And even then, as soon as you toss in the word objectively, I think you got a problem. But you've been indulging me for a while, so has the chat, so we're going to wrap it up. So we got a few good guests coming up next week. We were looking on booking a really interesting guest on a Japanese case. We're not sure if we've got him yet. If we don't, it'll just be Xandring and I, and we'll probably just shoot the shit with you guys. If we get him, great. We have a few other guests that we're looking at for the next couple of weeks. So looking forward to that. Overtime on Wednesday, and we're going to be covering breaking. If we get word that there has been an invasion of the Ukraine, we're going to go breaking to that on overtime. So we're all just sort of sitting and waiting, and nobody knows. And Putin likes it that way, and it does have its benefits. So we'll sit, we'll wait. Nobody knows if he even intends to. It's all guesses. So join the Discord, and you'll learn about things as we do. Like and subscribe. That's a great way to help out and help out the channel. And hopefully, even if you disagree, you like the debate and you like a show that's willing to. So pass this on to your friends, and maybe come in and chat with us some more. Come into the Discord. Thank you to the mods who've been helping tonight. It was just a off the cuff show, and I'm really glad we did it. And I think it was a good discussion anyway. So thank you both who really came in and started making those comments, because hey, by the way, if I'm wrong, the good thing about being wrong is you're smarter the next day. So if I'm wrong and if somebody shows that to me, then great, right? So thank you guys for coming. I think that was a good discussion, and I will catch up with everybody on our Discord and just on the channel later. And I think I've covered all the house cleaning. I'm sort of like, I'm starting to get tired now. So I see a few other comments I want to get into. I was like, nope, we're done. I'm going to call it. And what we'll do is we will, we'll be back. We're going to go back to doing these regularly. It's just a question of timing. It's not easy to do. Fridays just don't work. And so many days are booked to so many other channels, and channels are some of them. So you know what? There are people on In Time who want to see other channels too, and we don't like competing with people that we like. So, except for Neil 604, we just love landing on his times. I was going to say, somebody don't tell him I said that yet. Show him the clip. Just kidding, Neil. You know what? I love Neil. I love his show. I just have a hard time watching a show where the host thinks that Star Wars is spelled with a T. At any rate, don't tell him I said that one. At any rate, thank you all for joining us, and we will catch up with you soon. Have a great evening, all. Welcome to In Time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. We read all of your comments, and if you like this video, please don't forget to share.